You wake before dawn, listening to your own house creak, pretending the noises are normal, not warnings traveling through pipes and walls. You dress in confidence like a pressed uniform, stepping into bright cameras while your pockets quietly fill with sand you didn't notice. You speak in calm promises, but each word lands like a coin on a metal table, ringing too long in the stunned silence. Behind your smile, a furnace hums, and you tell yourself the heat is progress, not a flame learning your name. You sign papers with steady hands, yet the ink feels warm, as if it came from a vein instead of a pen. At first, the crowd cheers your bold steps, and you mistake their noise for loyalty, not panic trying to sound patriotic. You keep the lights on in every room, terrified of shadows, and the electric meter spins like a compass losing north. Each morning, you open reports like sealed letters, and the envelopes breathe out a faint smell of smoke and sweet rot. You begin to notice groceries priced like ransom notes, and you laugh too loudly as if humor can cancel arithmetic. You tell families to hold on, to stay calm, while their kitchen jars empty faster than your speeches can refill them. The street murmurs grow sharper, and you hear your own footsteps echo as if the floor beneath you is turning hollow. You raise your voice, but it comes out thinner, like paper held to a flame, curling at the edges without permission. Old allies glance away, counting something behind their eyes, and you feel their silence weighing more than their words. You keep borrowing tomorrow to pay for today, stacking calendars like sandbags against a river that won't stop rising. Your hands start to shake when you sign again, and the signature looks less like a name and more like a plea. You sense the public trust thinning, a worn rope fraying strand by strand, even as you pull harder to prove strength. Night comes with sirenless dread, and you stare at the ceiling, hearing coins fall somewhere you cannot reach. You realize the fear is contagious, moving person to person like breath in winter, turning every purchase into a small confession. You try to command the storm with a podium and flags, but the wind only answers by stripping paint from the wall. In the end, you stand alone in your bright room, surrounded by promises, watching them inflate and burst one by one. You tell yourself the popping sounds are temporary, like fireworks fading, even as the smoke lingers and settles into your clothes. You walk through hallways lined with portraits, their painted eyes following you, reminding you that confidence once looked quieter. Each promise you repeat feels lighter, like a balloon losing air, and you grip the string harder to hide the sag. You notice time stretching strangely, days dragging while prices sprint ahead, leaving you breathless and pretending not to chase. You smile at graphs you barely recognize, nodding as if nods can turn confusion into command. Somewhere, a factory light flickers off, unnoticed at first, like a single star blinking out before the sky understands. You hear the word temporary echo so often it becomes a lullaby, rocking you into uneasy half-sleep. Letters arrive thicker now, heavier in the hand, and you stack them carefully, afraid one might start screaming. You shake hands with strangers who smell of patience wearing thin, their grips firmer than before. In public, you laugh about resilience, but privately, you count how many chairs remain before the music stops. You sense the room cooling despite the heat, conversations shortening, smiles stiffening like drying paint. You tell yourself control is still yours, even as doors close softly behind you without asking. Old routines fail quietly, like watches slowing, each second slipping a fraction further from truth. You borrow again, promising repayment with a future that now feels like fog you can sign but not see. The crowd listens differently, heads tilted, as if weighing not your words but your breathing. You begin to fear pauses, the moments between sentences where doubt rushes in uninvited. Night news hums like insects, endless, small, impossible to silence, crawling into your dreams. You wake with numbers stuck to your skin, imaginary stains you scrub but cannot remove. You speak of strength, louder, faster, hoping volume can replace weight. Deep down, you sense the floor bending, not breaking yet, but learning how. You notice fewer people meeting your eyes, as if looking directly at you has become an unnecessary expense. Your calendar fills with emergency meetings that feel rehearsed, every face nodding while privately preparing exit. You reassure yourself that patience is a virtue, though it now feels like a tax quietly collected every morning. You hear whispers of sacrifice, and they always seem to mean someone else's comfort, never your own chair. The mirrors in your halls seem older, reflecting a version of you carrying more weight than yesterday. You begin to speak in shorter sentences, saving breath as if air itself might soon cost more. Applause arrives late now, scattered and uneven, like rain failing to reach dry ground. You frame hardship as discipline, telling yourself restraint builds character, not resentment. At night, you replay old speeches, searching for the moment confidence quietly turned into insistence. You sense deals being made without you, doors closing with polite smiles and careful wording. The public squares feel louder yet emptier, voices rising but meaning thinning like overused fabric. You cling to rituals, flags, slogans, familiar rhythms, hoping repetition can slow erosion. Each delay feels heavier than action, a pause stretching long enough to bruise. You promise stability while standing on ground that subtly shifts, testing your balance without warning. You start to dread good news, knowing it never arrives alone, always asking for more. Your shadow lengthens strangely, distorted by lights you insisted on keeping too bright. You feel the cost of living pressing inward, not as hunger, but as constant unease. Conversations turn transactional, kindness measured, trust weighed like scarce supplies. You realize belief was the quiet engine, and it is now coughing behind the walls. Still, you straighten your jacket and step forward. Because stopping would admit the room is sinking, you begin to measure days by reactions, not results, watching faces more closely than outcomes. Your words feel rehearsed before you speak them, as if the room has already decided how they will land. You sense faith thinning like worn fabric, stretched too often, patched too late. Each announcement demands belief up front, payment later, and fewer people agree to the terms. You notice silence becoming heavier than protest, settling into corners you cannot sweep away. You lean on tradition like an old railing, surprised when it bends under familiar weight. Confidence turns into insistence, insistence into repetition, repetition into noise. You watch savings shrink quietly, like water lines retreating from a once full shore. Promises stack higher, but their foundations soften, sinking unevenly under pressure. You speak of unity while counting divisions, aware the numbers no longer favor you. The crowd listens with crossed arms, patience folded neatly but no longer offered freely. You feel urgency creep into your voice, a tremor you pretend is passion. Meetings end faster now, decisions postponed like parcels nobody wants to sign for. You realize delay has become policy, hesitation dressed as caution. Outside, prices whisper faster than you can respond, passing mouth to mouth unchecked. You tell yourself fear is exaggerated, even as it begins setting the schedule. Allies ask sharper questions, framed politely but aimed carefully. You sense the room recalculating you, reassessing weight, value, and endurance. Your authority feels lighter in your hands, like a tool worn smooth from overuse. Still, you hold it up for all to see, hoping shine can replace strength. You begin to notice how often reassurance replaces answers, a habit forming where solutions once stood. Your days blur into briefings and exits, each doorway feeling narrower than the last. You sense confidence leaking out through small cracks, unnoticed until the room feels colder. Every decision now carries an echo, repeating doubts long after the words leave your mouth. You promise steadiness while your hands adjust constantly, searching for a grip that won't slip. The public nods, but their eyes wander, calculating routes that no longer include you. You hear comparisons whispered behind you, names from the past spoken with uneasy nostalgia. Support becomes conditional, offered carefully, withdrawn at the first sign of strain. You feel watched, not with hope, but with appraisal, as if you're an asset nearing maturity. Each press conference feels heavier, lights hotter, air thinner, patience shorter. You repeat that the situation is under control, even as the phrase begins to sound foreign. Delays stack quietly, like unopened mail gathering dust on a once polished desk. You sense urgency everywhere, except where action should begin. Outside, routines fracture, small habits breaking first, larger ones soon after. You tell yourself people will adapt, though adaptation now feels like surrender. Trust erodes unevenly, sudden in places you ignored, slow where you expected collapse. You realize leadership has become performance, applause measured, exits timed. The room feels crowded with expectations, yet strangely empty of belief. You hold meetings late into the night, hoping fatigue will soften resistance. Still, when morning comes, the pressure remains settled deeper than before. You feel time compressing, weeks folding into days, urgency pressing closer to your chest. Each statement you release feels heavier, as if gravity has quietly increased overnight. You notice plans shrinking in scope, ambition trimmed back like frayed edges. The room grows quieter before you speak, not with respect, but anticipation of disappointment. You sense patience wearing thin, a resource rationed without announcement. Your confidence now requires reminders, propped up like scaffolding around a weakening wall. You hear laughter less often, replaced by cautious murmurs and side glances. Every adjustment you make feels reactive, a step behind events that refuse to slow. You promise relief ahead, though the road signs keep changing without notice. Allies nod carefully, weighing consequences before offering even a word. You feel responsibility pressing downward, a weight no speech can redistribute. Small mistakes linger longer now, magnified under unforgiving light. You sense credibility thinning, stretched across too many reassurances. The crowd no longer leans forward, they lean back, arms crossed, minds elsewhere. You begin to recognize fatigue as collective, shared quietly across faces. Each delay adds another layer of doubt, settling like dust that dulls every surface. You tell yourself endurance is strength, though it now resembles inertia. The air feels denser, breathing slower, decisions harder to lift. You realize momentum has reversed, pulling you instead of pushing forward. Still, you continue, because stopping would reveal how far the ground has fallen away. You sense urgency shifting from headlines into kitchens, where concern now sits quietly at the table. Your reassurances travel slower, arriving after decisions have already been made elsewhere. You notice habits changing, purchases smaller, pauses longer, trust rationed carefully. Each statement feels like a patch, applied quickly, never quite sealing the leak beneath. You hear the phrase, just in case, everywhere, spoken softly but carried with intent. The future feels closer now, not as hope, but as a bill waiting at the door. You watch confidence retreat into savings jars and careful planning. Your authority meets hesitation first, agreement only if nothing else moves. You feel decisions slipping downward, settling into hands you no longer guide. Public patience thins invisibly, like ice warming without cracking. You speak of normalcy, but routines already feel unfamiliar. The room smells faintly of caution, a scent that lingers even after you leave. You realize fear no longer needs encouragement. It sustains itself. Your words echo less, absorbed by surfaces that once reflected them. You notice fewer risks taken, fewer dreams voiced aloud. Each calm moment feels borrowed, fragile as glass. You sense a collective bracing, bodies preparing for impact without a sound. Leadership feels distant now, filtered through doubt and delay. You understand that momentum has moved into the crowd, away from you. Still, you continue speaking, because silence would confirm what everyone already feels. You feel certainty slipping from language itself, words bending under the weight of expectation. Every forecast sounds cautious now, wrapped in conditions like fragile glass. You notice silence answering questions once met with confident nods. Decisions arrive slower, filtered through fear of being wrong rather than hope of being right. You sense trust retreating into private spaces, away from shared rooms. The rhythm of daily life stutters, pauses growing longer between motions. You hear people planning quietly, futures folded small enough to carry alone. Your presence no longer steadies the room, it merely reminds it to wait. You feel accountability rising like water, touching your ankles without warning. Each promise feels conditional, spoken with eyes already checking exits. You speak of recovery, but the word lands softly, without grip. The crowd responds politely, conserving energy for moments beyond you. You sense caution becoming habit, habit becoming instinct. Confidence fades not loudly, but through constant adjustment. You notice hope turning inward, private and guarded. Every calm day feels rehearsed, maintained by effort rather than ease. You realize authority now competes with memory, not vision. The present feels crowded by the future's shadow. You stand at the center, aware the balance has shifted beyond recall. Still, you speak forward, because silence would confirm the transfer is complete. You sense a quiet shift as conversations bypass you, decisions forming in smaller circles. Your announcements feel ceremonial, observed rather than acted upon. You notice trust moving sideways, exchanged privately instead of declared openly. Each reassurance sounds like closure, not momentum. You feel the ground steadier beneath others than beneath yourself. The crowd listens out of habit, not expectation. You hear history invoked carefully, as comparison rather than praise. Support now comes with disclaimers, footnotes spoken aloud. You sense authority thinning into symbolism. The future feels negotiated elsewhere, beyond your reach. You speak slower, choosing words like fragile tools. The room responds with measured silence. You realize stability has become something people create without you. Each day confirms the shift was gradual, not sudden. You feel less resisted, more bypassed. Your presence marks formality, not direction. You sense relief when you leave the room. The system continues, adapted, quieter, independent. You understand loss of control didn't arrive as collapse, but as absence. And you stand there, knowing the transfer finished long before anyone named it. You wake to a quiet that feels settled, not calm, as if the house learned to live without your voice. Messages arrive fewer now, trimmed to necessities, no longer asking permission. You sense decisions locking into place elsewhere, firm enough to stand without you. Your role feels ceremonial, a presence maintained out of habit rather than need. You notice relief spreading subtly, not at progress, but at distance. The language around you changes, careful, neutral, finished. You hear gratitude expressed for stability achieved quietly, without direction. The crowd no longer waits for signals. They move when ready. You realize control did not break, it dissolved into routine. What frightened you most was not collapse, but irrelevance arriving unnoticed. You replay the beginning, searching for the moment pressure became dependency. You understand now how comfort borrowed too long becomes obligation. Inflation was never a fire, but a slow heat teaching people to adapt without you. Each adjustment reduced reliance, each delay shifted weight away. You feel the finality not as shock, but as completion. The system breathes steadily, independent, unremarkable, alive. You stand inside the structure you built, realizing it no longer leans on you. Authority fades into memory, filed carefully, without anger. You accept that power left gently, carried off in ordinary choices. And you remain, not fallen, but replaced by the quiet of continuity.